Have you ever gotten to a place in life where you find yourself asking, what now? That's right, what now? Circumstances and situations have happened. You feel as if you've been hit from the left and the right. You feel as if nothing that you do ends up working out the way that you desire for it to work out, and you just don't know what you need to do right now. The reality is we've all been there. And sometimes we've been there without the tools, techniques, and strategies to help us make effective decisions to produce the future that we desire. You don't have to do this alone anymore. I invite you to listen to my podcast. That's right, my name is Clifton Pettyjohn. I'm a purpose strategist, author, transformation coach, and spiritual leader. And I host the What Now podcast. And the What Now podcast is simply conversations that teach us how to effectively face life's most difficult moments. That's right, life's most difficult moments. So, if you're interested in hearing the podcast, I encourage you to visit my website, www.cliftonpettyjohn.com. Again, www.cliftonpettyjohn.com. There's a tab for the podcast, and you can pick your favorite platform. We're available on multiple platforms, so you can pick your favorite platform, pick the platform, subscribe to the podcast, listen, comment, and share. All right? So I encourage you again, make sure that you are listening to the What Now podcast. What's up, everybody? My name is Clifton Pettyjohn, and you are listening to Transformation Radio, where we transform lives through purposeful conversations. What's up, everybody? Welcome back, or welcome to Transformation Radio. My name is Clifton Pettyjohn. I'm a purpose strategist, author, transformation coach, and spiritual leader. I provide tools and strategies to transition you from merely existing to living a life full of purpose. Yes, full of purpose. You might ask, am I talking to you? Let's do this exercise really quick. Breathe in, hold it, breathe out. Breathe in, hold it, breathe out. If you were able to participate in that exercise, that means that there's breath yet left in your body. Therefore, purpose remains. Purpose remains. There's purpose inside each and every one of you. I welcome you again to Transformation Radio, where we have purposeful conversations regardless of how uncomfortable and unpopular those conversations are. Just a little update. We had our last show. Our guest was Harrison Domerkent. He is the real estate agent located here in Dover, Delaware. He's licensed in Delaware and Maryland. There were some technical issues, so he's going to be back on August 21st to redo the show so that we can get that content out. He let everybody know a lot about things going on with real estate and property and selling and buying, all of those great things. He addressed some of the myths that are out there. So I wanted him to come back so he can be a part of the show. However, tonight we have an amazing guest, y'all. I'm telling you now, we are in for a treat on tonight. Now, listen, you already know I open up the phone lines throughout the entire show. That's right. I want you to be a part of the conversation. That doesn't mean, I want you to be a part of the conversation. And with that said, I want each and every one of us to understand that each guest that we have, and myself, we all, and you listening, we come from diverse backgrounds and belief systems. Therefore, everything that's said on this show, you are not going to agree with. And guess what? That's okay. I even invite you on to discuss some of the things that you disagree with. However, that's where I want you to hear me, those calling in. However, when you call in to express your disagreement, you must do so in a respectful manner. Why? Because I believe that it is our diversity, our ability to embrace each other's diversity that helps us grow, learn, develop, and even produce generations that are better for the world that we are in right now, all right? So the call-in number is 516-387-1756. Again, the call-in number is 516-387-1756. Please remember, I don't know if I said it, but if you do call in and you are disrespectful in any manner, I'm going to have to hit that X. But we haven't had to do it yet, and I believe tonight's going to be another night that we're not going to have to do it, because I believe everybody is out there, is out there listening, ready to grow and ready to be a greater version of who they were created and designed to be. All right, so now, without further ado, I want each and every one of you, standing up all over the building, now I'm playing, I want each and every one of you to help me welcome tonight's guest. There's so many words that could describe him. I'm going to use one word to describe him right now, and that would be a metaphorologist. All right, he is a metaphorologist. Throughout the conversation, we'll begin to explain exactly what a metaphorologist is, but I want you to help me welcome to the show, Michael Andrew. Mike, how are you tonight?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on tonight.
Awesome. Again, thank you for your willingness to be on the show. I know that many are going to hear everything that we talk about. They're going to be able to grab it and apply it to their life and begin to produce in manners that they never dreamt or imagined.
Yes, sir. You know, it's
all right,
interesting because you...
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
I was going to say it's just interesting being on. I know you're probably going to mention it later, but I just wanted to tell you thank you for your patience with me, because you tried to get me on some time ago, and I was a bit resistant. And, of course, I told you where I was in that time, and I'll talk about it a little bit later. But I thank you for your patience, and I thank you for who you are.
Oh, no problem. Thank you. Listen, we are going to talk about it a little bit later, because I know that there are a lot of people that experience those moments in their lives, and I believe that the story, you telling your story, can help them even through that process.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, so we start off every conversation, because I don't even look at it as interviews. I believe it's conversations. So we start off every conversation with an icebreaker, and I use the same question for everybody. I'll probably have a new question next season, but I love this question, so I always like to ask everybody this question. If you could have one superpower, what would that superpower be and why?
If I could have one superpower, I'd have to say the ability to disappear. And the reason why is because just by nature I'm an introvert, and so I'm constantly in a space where, you know, especially now, there's demand on me, and professionally, you know, ministry-wise, there's a demand on me. And some days I wish I could just disappear, because if I disappeared, I'll have a reason for not talking, other than I don't want to. So I think that would be it.
Okay. Now, let's talk about that right there, the introverted aspect of who you are. how do you handle that then when there is such a demand? Because there's a lot of introverts that are out there. I know that was a struggle with me for a long time because I'm the type of person, like you said, I don't mind just disappearing. I'm fine. I'm fine being in the background helping push everybody else. I love doing that.
Yes.
So how did you, as an introvert, break out from that and begin to experience your journey as it relates to your purpose, being in the forefront?
Well, interestingly, so I'll say this much, that I started off doing ministry in church at the age of 8. And so the ministry that I was doing music ministry, which is very visible. And so my entire life I've actually been very visible. And then add on top of it, I understand that I'm super charismatic. And so I get that, when I'm talking and I'm moving around and things like that, people probably would interpret me as an extrovert. But actually, as an introvert, I say that I'm an introvert because I recharge when I'm by myself. Some people recharge like when they're talking or when they're out, and me is when I'm by myself. And so, when I go into social settings, and I'm saying all this to answer your question, but when I go into social settings, they actually drain me. When I get in conversations, they actually drain me. Not that I don't get anything out of them, not that I'm, not fed from it, but physically, mentally, it's something that I have to recharge from. And so the way that I manage that is I really have had to learn to protect my space. I used to feel really guilty for asking for my own space. I used to feel really guilty for taking my own time by myself. And then I also have to say this too. So I'm very discerning, and I always have been. And so I'm very sensitive to when people will drain my energy, even if they haven't had a chance to. I can just tell it from, and I remember when I was younger, I was the kid who, if I met somebody or, was around somebody, I wouldn't necessarily speak to them, especially if I felt like they're going to be somebody who's going to drain my energy. I just wouldn't speak. And I remember my mom and my sister would say to me, at least speak. And I'm like, nah, I'm cool. I'm good. But it's really because I understood that I don't think I understood that I was an introvert at the time. What I did understand is there's something about that person that I'm just not feeling. And with that being said, it made it a bit difficult for me growing up because I looked stubborn or I looked whatever. But now that I'm in this space and I understand I'm at, at a level of maturity and self-awareness that I understand that that I charge alone, I understand that once I get in the space where I need to recharge, I can just honestly say to the people around me, yo, look, I appreciate you wanting to be around me, wanting to engage with me, wanting to talk to me, but right now I need to be alone. And so for me, the management of that comes in knowing when I need to give and when it is that I need to receive. That's like a very, very important lesson for me because I've been a person, and I won't get into it just yet, but I've been a person who's overextended myself, given to the point of me being empty, and then still felt guilty for not giving enough.
Now, we can stay right there. We actually can talk about that. You'll see what this conversation, it seems like we'll be all over the place, but it all makes sense in the end. But, yeah, because there's a lot of people out there that's dealing with that very thing that you're talking about as well, with overextending themselves and still feeling as if it's not enough. Can you share on that for a little bit and then explain how you got to a place where, you were able to find the balance in all of that and not carry that weight or that burden anymore as it relates to that?
I'll say that for me, I was not aware that I was overextending myself. Let me be clear. I was like, I'm always tired, and I'm like, well, that just comes with the job. I'm like, I'm getting frustrated. That's because I can't figure this out. And I always reason myself out of really coming to the truth that, no, buddy, you're overextending yourself. What overextending myself actually looks like is, sometimes it looked like staying up all night to do something that I wasn't getting paid for or I wasn't reaping any benefits from. Or sometimes it looked like things I was getting paid for or reaping benefits from, I'm late on. And or I'm behind on, or I don't deliver the product or whatever it is, at 100%. And so what it took for me, honestly, to get to the point of being aware of the fact that I'm overextending myself, was me getting to a place where everything that I was doing became the question. I was so worn out. I was so, as the word goes, jaded. I was so jaded to the point where I'm like, you know what, I can throw all this away. You know what, every bit of this can go. I mean, I remember in November of 2015, I remember just sitting there, and I got to a point where I was like, you know what, I am done. At this point, I was pastoring. I was, I was married at the time. I mean, it was just a lot going on with me. And I had just gotten to a point where, like, everything was just draining me, everything. And so I had gathered every bottle of pills that I could find in the house. I just gathered everyone I could find. And I was like, you know what, let me just do this. Let me just go. And I remember sitting there with the pills at hand. And I said, you know what, I don't have to do this. And I wasn't talking about taking the pills. I was just talking about the space that I was in. I just don't have to do this. I don't have to be here. And I think a lot of times we overextend ourselves because we get in a place of obligation. And when we get in that place of obligation, we are very, very unaware and very, very tone deaf to how we should engage and how we should navigate. And so we're constantly putting ourselves in a place where people are getting from us. And what I've learned is that people will never say enough for you. People will never say, you know what, I see that this is where you are. And there are, and I'm saying no one, but I'm just saying in general, people won't. There are people who notice what you're going, but people who are reaping the benefits of you overextending yourself more than likely are not going to tell you enough, because they're probably not even going to see it. Because also we become good at putting on face. We become good at, pretending like I got this, it's going, whatever, but I stayed up all night. I haven't slept in 3 weeks, but you know what? You have your product, and guess what? I'm still broke. I stayed at the church. I stayed at the church counseling you, but then I go home and my family is broken. It's things like that. And so for me, when I got to the point where I had gotten jaded, I had gotten worn out, and realized that I didn't have to do that, I didn't have to be there, that was the very moment where my life completely changed. And here's the kicker. People think, well, you get to that point and then it feels so empowering. Actually, no, I went into a breakdown, and I had to make some very unpopular decisions, literally, to save my life. Without warning, without saying anything, I resigned my position at the church. I left my marriage. I left the city. I left, my brother's band, and I loved all the people and all the stuff. But it was just like, you know what? In order for me to really get to a place where I am clear on who I am and who God is in me, I have to do something to save my life. Nobody understood it. There's people I didn't talk to for a long time, people who didn't want to deal with me for a long time. And also it put me in a space where I felt like everybody was against me. And that's the ugly truth of coming to that point. Everybody wants to get to the point where they're not overextending themselves and not doing this. But actually that comes with an ugly process. I'm still talking, but I'm just saying it comes with an ugly process.
Yeah, you're good. You were good. That is so true. That's why I told you no answer's too long. You're good. You talked about the ugly process of it all, and I think that a lot of people, that there are some that are fearful of the ugly process because they can start to see that that's what's going to unfold, and then there are some that just I don't want the ugliness of it. I don't want to have to confront some of these things in my life. But you also showed the side that once you did that, it did become freeing. But you had to go through that process.
Oh yes, and I'm talking about the first time it happened, because I'm actually going through it again right now. Okay. And it's happened in phases, because it's just different areas of my life. And you think you get free, you think you're whole, and then you're like, but there's this whole other thing, and I can't even get into where I am right now because it's going to give away too much of what I'm sharing at the end of the month. Nonetheless, I'm saying that to say, I don't know if the majority of your listeners are Bible subscribers or listen or read the Bible, whatever, but I'm just going to quote the scripture that it says that who is speaking of Jesus, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame. See, a lot of times we don't realize that we're going to have to go through a, if you will, Calvary experience. We're going to have to go through that kind of experience in order to get to joy. Not because, God is mad at us or the universe is working against us, not because of that, but because in order to become who we are. Because, see, we sometimes allow traumas and we allow life circumstances to cause us to unbecome. And so when we unbecome who we are, then the process of becoming who we are again causes us to go through this place that most of us don't want to go through, and that's a place called shame. And that doesn't mean that you have to be ashamed, but what shame is, you have to think about it in this term, like in that reference of Scripture. Jesus was bearing a cross. He was literally lynched, the most brutal and the most embarrassing form of death. It's not just that he died, but the way that he died, and he did it in the open. He didn't have clothes on. He did it naked. And the thing is, what I'm talking about when I talk about shame is I'm talking about getting to the place where you're so willing to be vulnerable, so willing to be, hypothetically, metaphorically naked, and just say, yo, I don't have it. And I've been pretending I do. Yo, I'm not whole. I've been pretending that I am. And you have to get to that space. And once you get to that space where you really understand that I'm enduring this now, but on the other side of this is joy, it really does help you. It sounds like cliche to think, that, just think of what's coming after this. But sometimes, when I could not just pull myself together, I remember getting to a place and I was talking to a friend and I said, I don't even feel like I have purpose. Now imagine the guy who people came to for this, that, and the other, who, charismatic, spiritual, intelligent, talented, all this stuff. Everybody looked at me in these different ways. I'm musically talented. I'm computer tech savvy. All this stuff, and everybody looks at me this way. But then, even with all my gifting, even with all my ability, even with all my anointing, even with all my purpose, I felt like I didn't have purpose. And it was in that time, the joy of it was knowing, what, I'm going through this, but on the other side of this is joy. Here's the thing, though. Here's the caveat. The caveat is I didn't end up in that place, the place that I was in, that place of shame. I didn't end up there. And life circumstance didn't drive me there. Like I told you earlier, I made some unpopular decisions. It is when you get to the place where you choose to walk that path. Jesus said, nobody takes my life, I lay it down.
I lay it down.
I chose this path. And see, there's no way that we're going to get to a place of wholeness. There's no place that we're going to get to a space where we are, different, where we are in joy, we are in truth. We're not going to get there by letting life happen to us. We have to be intentional, and we have to make some decisions, even the unpopular ones. Why? Because once we make those decisions, everything that we need to be and everything that we desire to have starts aligning with that path.
Well, you said a mouthful there, but what I picked from all of that was the last part that you just said, and you wrapped it all up, that we have to be intentional and we have to be willing to make decisions regardless of how unpopular those decisions are. So let's go back to when you were at that space and you're making those decisions, for you. What actually got you to that place? Like, can you identify exactly what got you to the place to realize I have to do this for me?
So I am 32 years old. I'm saying this only to draw a narrative. I'm 32 years old now. I was 25, 26 years old, and I had teenagers. I was raising teenagers.
I got you.
I'm saying that to say I went to a conference in D.C. When I was 26 years old, and I'm sitting in the lobby of the hotel waiting to go to the airport because my flight was later on. All the people who I was there at the conference with have left. My flight was at 8 o'clock that night. So I'm just sitting in the lobby by myself, not doing anything, just sitting there. And it just dawned on me, I'm sitting here, and there's a whole city that I could be seeing. I'm just sitting here, and there's, restaurants I could be going to, sites I could be seeing, and I'm just sitting here, and I had a revelation and an epiphany even, and that revelation, that epiphany was that I'm 26 years old. When I realized that I had literally become a product of life, if you will, that I was on autopilot. It was that moment that really things started shifting for me. The revelation that I was 26 years old and I was basically living the life of a 1,000-year-old. Not just that, right? Because there's some people who are older who, have more of a life. But I was a robot.
I feel you.
I was a robot. And so when I realized that I was a robot, it kind of, made me feel some type of way, honestly. And here's the thing. There's so many of us that are robots and we don't know it. We think because we have feelings, we express emotions, that we're not robots. But what does a robot do? A robot responds to programming. Some of us are programmed to respond in certain ways. Some of us are programmed to navigate in certain ways. And without thinking, without even it being in our conscious mind, we rehearse these narratives, we perpetuate these behaviors because we're robots. And so when I got to that space, how did I know that I was at that space? I knew I was at that space because I said, my life has been living itself for me. And when that happened, I got to a space, I was like, okay, and this is here, and let me show you how programmed that was. My first thought was, okay, Lord, what should I do? What should I do? And so I spent probably 2 or 3 weeks asking the Lord what I should do. It was a programmed behavior because my church taught me that if you get to a space where you feel like things are supposed to change or things are supposed to be different, then you ask the Lord what to do, and you don't move unless the Lord tells you to move. And so I was asking the Lord what to do, but I was still stuck in the same place. For these 3 weeks, I'm not really making any changes because I'm sitting there asking the Lord, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And I'll never forget, I was in Bible class. I didn't want to be there. It was like I was dreading being there, and worship was going on before the lesson that night, and worship was going on, and all I remember is closing my eyes, and next thing I know, I'm opening my eyes and Bible study's over. And when I remember, if I can explain it to you, and this probably may sound like very spooky to some people, I could literally feel myself leave the room. I felt like I was floating elsewhere. I didn't see anything, I didn't hear anything, but I just knew I wasn't there anymore. And when I came to, the only thing that I knew at that point was that the only way that my life was going to change was if I made a decision. And I went home that night, and I was trying to explain to my family what happened to me. And I said, all I can tell y'all is this. We say we've been waiting on the Lord to give us an answer, and God has been waiting for us to make a decision.
Come on.
And I could not for the life of me really just explain what had happened. All I knew was that I had a moment where I was no longer in that body. I was no longer in that place. And when I returned as somebody who made decisions. Now, did that mean that from that point on I was seamlessly making decisions, all this stuff? No, but I had a different understanding. And so when you're talking to people and you're telling them that you have this quote-unquote revelation, sometimes we get in the space where we feel like we're supposed to be making people understand where we are.
Right.
And that again, going back to the obligation thing, so now I'm obligated to make you understand, because once I start making decisions, I feel obligated to take you with me. And that's the thing. And so we do that on several. Now, it's a deeper level, I think, when you're talking about family. When you're talking about family, I think it's just a deeper level. But in general, people do that with friends. They feel obligated to take friends with them. They feel obligated to take coworkers with them. They, even just businesses. Some people should have been ended and closed their businesses, but they feel obligated to take that business or that model with them. But when I came down from that place and I understood that, not that they didn't understand, but I don't think they really comprehended what was about to happen. It was about a year before I actually made changes and stuff that I really needed to make, and I can go into that, but I'm just saying to you that the way that I knew I was in that space is I discovered I was a robot. But the way that I started to come out of that place is I realized that I had the power to make decisions.
Now, you're out there listening tonight, and you're in a similar space as Mike was. And like he said, I'm going to take time, paraphrasing, seek God, see what he said, because I can't move until he speaks. And you're sitting and you're sitting and you're sitting, and day has gone by, and week has gone by, and months have gone by, and years have gone by, and for a decade has gone by, and you're still just sitting there patiently waiting. And people will tell you, well, you got to look back to biblical times. Some of them waited 50, 60, hundreds of years. Now, sometimes you've got to step up and really make a decision. Because if you don't make that decision, you're going to still be sitting right there waiting. Oh, man. Okay.
Man.
All right. So now, we're in a master class on tonight. So let's do this game real quick. Let's get this game out of the way, and then we can flow right back in the conversation, all right? So, I have 5 words. The first word is life. Life.
Back to life. Back to reality. Okay.
Okay. So the second word is supernatural.
My word for that is supernormal.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'll say that my personal mission statement is to equip normal people for a supernormal mission. When I say normal people, I know most people think out of the frame of like what is mundane, what is regular, but the word normal actually comes from a word that means to set a standard.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I say that I'm equipping normal people for a supernormal mission, I'm saying I'm equipping people who are standard setters to fulfill what is supernormal, what is supernatural, what exists beyond what we see and what we understand.
Good. I love definition and denoting words. I love that. Okay. Now the next word is freedom.
Knowing. And I'm only saying that is that the greatest freedom that we can have is to remove ourselves from the place of asking to the place of knowing. To me, that's the greatest freedom.
And that's a freedom that sometimes we haven't taken advantage of, is understanding how powerful that freedom is.
Yeah.
All right, the fourth word, and I always like to get strategists and people that are out here killing the game. I like to get people's thoughts on this word because so many people have different thoughts on it and different definitions of it, different beliefs of it. Purpose.
I'll say this, that if I ask you, what is the purpose of a chair?
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to me in response?
to hold me when I sit down.
Right. But have you ever needed to reach something and stood on a chair?
True. Yeah, true.
Right. So when I think of the word purpose, I think what it is best suited for. Because, yes, you can stand on a chair, but that's not what it was made for. And I think a lot of us, we can often get caught in things that we're able to do and not things that we're purposed to do or made to do. And so when you say purpose, I say getting to the root of who I am to know why I am.
And that's good right there. Now we're gonna stay right there for a minute. Because I believe a lot of people are in this space in life too. Because I know we keep staying in places and spaces, but a lot of people are right there where, as you said, they're doing a lot of things that they weren't necessarily purpose for, although they can be used for a specific purpose in doing a thing. And you come out of getting to the root of who they are. How does one begin that process?
Well, I'll say it this way. For me, it became evident for me when I realized first who I was not. And the reason I was able to identify who I was not is because I realized that I was doing stuff that was wearing me out.
Yes, Lord.
And so when I'm doing stuff that's wearing me out, there's got to be a disconnect. There's and I haven't really talked about and released it yet, but I've really been going through some changes, specifically in my business and my professional career, that will be seen in the next couple of months. But one of the things that I'm going to be saying a lot to clients and just in my business is that if you lead with identity, everything else will follow. And I think that a lot of times people lead with gift, people lead with skill, people lead with ideas. You can have an idea and it'd be a great idea, but you can pursue that idea and it go nowhere because it wasn't attached to identity. I've had so many ideas pass my mind. I'm just that type of person. I can really, you have to think, for me, I work with people in their brands. And so for me, I'm constantly being paid to have ideas for people's brands, for people's businesses. And so I can ideate all day long. I can come up with brilliant stuff. But even in that, for me, I have to ask, who is this brand? What is their purpose? What answer are they bringing? Because I believe that every single time we talk about purpose, we have to first ask, what question am I answering? Or what problem am I solving? And so a chair was created, going back to that analogy, the chair was created because there was nowhere to sit. And so whoever decided I'm going to make a chair said, I'm solving the problem for people who need somewhere elevated to sit. So when we talk about that, the identity of the chair lies in the answer that it provides. And so when I ask somebody what's their purpose, or when you ask somebody what's their purpose, what we're really asking them is, what answer were you meant to bring into the earth? And so getting to identity actually means finding out what answer we're supposed to bring. And I believe wholeheartedly that we find out what answer we're supposed to bring by really just discovering what question we have. Because the way that I've been able to reorganize my business and restructure it is by literally saying, this is how I'm feeling, this is what I'm experiencing. And so now I can say, I'm going to bring to my clients this because I was in this space, I can identify with this, and because I can identify with this, right, out of my identity, my ability to identify, out of my ability to identify, I can bring this answer to you.
Well, I've heard a lot of people talk about purpose, and I've talked about purpose a lot, but I haven't heard anybody talk about it like that. That's okay. Okay, here we're gonna keep right on going because we got a limited amount of time, and this could turn into beyond the time. Let's go. Here we go. Now I want to hear you break this word down too. Then transformation.
Oh wow, transformation. So I got to go back to this because I think you were on when I was teaching about be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And so the word transform comes from a word that means to renovate. And one of the things that I taught in that is that the first step of renovation is demolition. And so sometimes the breakdown that we experience is the first step in our remaking. So some people may be experiencing right now, feeling like they're breaking down, feel like they're losing relationships, feel like, they're lost in terms of their career or they're lost in terms of their relationships. And you feel broken in some sense of the word. I'm not saying emotionally broken, but in some sense of the word, it seems like what your life has been is now broken, or is now like destroyed, or is, being torn down to an extent. But what's really happening is you're in the opening stages of transformation. Because before a butterfly can fly, it must first break the cocoon.
Right.
What is that? What am I saying? The cocoon is something that the butterfly, the caterpillar itself constructed. But when it's time for them to come into the next phase of their life, they have to destroy what they created so they can fly. Just saying.
Hold on, we still in the conversation, but I need to write that down because what we created may be preventing us from flying. That's good right there. Okay. Okay. Now, we kind of have been all over the place, as it related to different areas of your life. I want to go back to where you were talking about you started ministry, doing different aspects of ministry at the age of 8. Now, I want to know your idea of ministry growing up versus your idea of ministry now. How has that evolved or how has that changed?
Okay. I'll say it this way. So growing up, when I looked at ministry, I looked at it from a very, very cultural perspective. What I mean by that is when we talk about somebody who's in ministry, we talk about somebody who more than likely is a preacher, right? And then our church, it wasn't until like the early 2000s where they started calling like different departments of the church ministries. But in our church, we called it departments. We call it departments. So really, the word ministry was, and minister even, was delegated to people who preached. I'll never forget the pastor who I grew up under, Bishop Byron Val Johnson. He preached a message from the scripture that talks about seeing therefore we have this ministry. He did his whole sermon talking about all of us are ministers of. And then at the end of his message, he said, I need all the ministers to come to the front. And then all the preachers started coming down. He said, didn't I just preach and say that we all have this ministry? He was like, all y'all come down, and I'll never forget that. I had to have been like 8 or 9 at that point, and it's so vivid in my mind still. But I'm saying that to say I realized that ministry, or being a minister even, wasn't what I thought it was. I thought it was for preachers. And after that, when he preached that message, I was like, wow, I just thought that was great. But then I got to a point where the word minister came up for me one day, and I looked it up, and I saw the word agent. as a synonym for minister. And then I started realizing that, countries have prime ministers, that people have ministries of defense, that people have ministers of this, that, and the other. Why am I saying that? Well, because now my understanding of being a minister is not necessarily somebody who preaches. My understanding now is someone who's an agent. Agent of what? What does an agent do? You have to go to the airline. The airline agent, what? It transacts for whatever that airline is. They perform transactions. And so now what I understand ministry to be, it is a transaction of what? Of causing, I am a minister, let me just say personally, I believe that I'm a minister of the kingdom. I'm a minister of the kingdom of God, right? And so in me being a kingdom minister or a kingdom agent, what my job is now is to transact business between earth and heaven. And so that's not necessarily about going to church. That's not necessarily about having a home church. That's not necessarily about, going to choir rehearsal, Bible study, or going to preach like I used to, and traveling and driving all over the city in the middle of the night, all over the country in the middle of the night, and being tired and getting to church on Sunday morning, still trying to, that's not what that is. That's not what that is. Yeah. I'm literally called in whatever paradigm or whatever room I walk in, whatever industry I walk in, whatever mountain I'm, participating in, if you will. I'm there to transact business between earth and heaven. And so everywhere that I go, every space that I walk in, every room that I sit in, every table that I sit at, every person I talk to, I am constantly transacting. I always tell people, I asked this guy who I've been, kind of sharing with, and who's been talking to me and listening to me for several years. I asked him, I said, why do you call me? I said, when you get in these places of change, when you get in these places where you need to make a shift, right? Why do you call me? And he was like, well, because I don't really trust a lot of people. I said, no. I said, I'm gonna tell you why you call me. I said, you call me because every time you come to me, I don't care what you're talking about. I don't care what you're calling me about. You know that every single time you come to me, I'm going to give you God. And sometimes I never mention a Bible. I never mention a scripture. I never mention anything spiritual. But when I tell you that I'm going to give you God, I'm going to give you, because I believe that at the root of who I am is God. I believe at the root of who all of us is God. And so when you come to me, you talk to me, I'm transacting between heaven and earth. So when I'm transacting, when you come to me, I'm giving you God. What am I doing? I'm trying to return you to who you are. And so in giving you who you are, giving you who I am, I can return you to who you are, and I'm returning you to God. And so when I say I'm a minister, I'm somebody who can help people. I'm somebody who can help people identify who they are, identify who God is in them. That's what I believe in any room, in any format, in any platform. That's what ministry is to me.
Now, you brought up such a good point, or a great point about ministry. Let's talk about the reform, and then we're going to talk about your business, and then we'll go from there. But let's talk about the reform. Can you give a general synopsis of what the reform is?
Yes, sir. The reform is a faith community designed to help you become you again. And John 10, Jesus said, other sheep have I that are not of this fold. I'll never forget many years ago, it was just about 10 years ago now, I was planning on starting a ministry, a church, as a matter of fact, called Excellence Worship Life Center. And I remember in the planning process that my mother kept telling me that I was called to the lost sheep. You're called to the lost sheep. You're called to the lost sheep. And I did not understand what my mother was talking about. And so I was just like, okay. And, in my mind at that time, because of the paradigm that I existed in, I thought that lost sheep were backsliders. So, I just really, I really thought that, okay, maybe she means people who, used to go to church but don't go to church anymore. And I'll never forget that when the vision for the reform came to me, and I'm sure you're probably asking a little bit more about that, but when the vision of the reform came to me, I realized that scripture, I read that scripture many times, but I didn't read it the way that I read that time, that many sheep have I that are not of this fold. And what the reform really is a gathering of other sheep, people who may not ever go into a traditional church, who may not have a traditional ministry, who may not even subscribe to the concept that they even teach in church. But I also understand that there's a God desire and a God connectivity, and so it's my job really to lead those sheep in that flock, if you will.
Okay. So now, how did you talk about the vision. How did the vision come about? How did you understand, the structuring of it all and just be ready to run with it? Because many times you hear things like, I got a vision to start this, but it's not a traditional church. It's a faith community. And a lot of people all people hear is, that ain't God.
Right.
That ain't God. But am I wrong though? People start,
no.
That's that New Age stuff. I'm not dealing with that New Age stuff.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So
it's funny. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say on that point, it was just funny to me because I remember when in 2017, when I first announced about the reform, and I'm the first statement that I made that it's not a church, and this man who I used to go to church with commented on my Facebook post and said, well, what is it? And I'll never forget that. And I told him, I said to him, if you don't get it, it's not for you.
And that's the key. I get that. That's definitely the key. So even though with the reform though, and that's one thing that I love about the reform is that when you come, and it's virtually, you feel welcome. You don't feel as if you have to put on any airs. You don't have to, try to be something that you're not. You can just relax and be yourself. And the word that comes forth, I tell a lot of people. First of all, I tell people you're my pastor.
Okay.
But
okay.
Yeah, I do. I really do. Seriously, I do, because what goes on at the reform, and I tell them you have to come experience it for yourself so that you can see that I'm not putting on airs or anything. I want you to understand that this is what ministry is. When I look at ministry, the way my mind is made up about ministry, this is what ministry really is, because it's not about form or fashion, who's dressed the best. It's not about any of those things. It's not about, the title and the positions, and I'm fighting over who sits here and you're in my seat, so now I can't even get into service. It's not about any of those things. It is about, people, as you said, returning to your identity of who you are. So I always tell people I want them to experience this thing for themselves. What would you say to those that are out there that right now they don't go to church, they don't want to hear anything about God right now because they had, some experiences at church? What would you say to them about, being able to attend an experience like this?
I would say if you don't like God, then somebody lied to you.
Mm-hmm.
Because the God that I know, not from what I was told, not even what a scripture told me, but the God that I've experienced, the God that changes me and is changing me, he is not the one that they presented to me when I was younger at all. Mm-hmm. And so what I would first say to people is, I apologize. Not even I apologize. I'm sorry that somebody misrepresented God. I'm sorry that somebody lied to you about who God is. And secondly, I'd say to you, give yourself the opportunity to think again. Give yourself an opportunity to perceive again. Because one thing that I know is that we can argue scripture, We can argue doctrine. We can argue philosophies. But one thing we cannot argue is undeniable manifestation of change. And so what I would tell people is forget talking about God at this moment. Forget talking about spirituality at this moment. If you are somebody who knows that you need change in your life, if you're somebody who feels like you've come out of contact with who you are, you feel like you've lost who you are, just come to the Reform on that strength. I'm not trying to convert you because, you can chew the meat, spit out the bones. There might be some stuff that you say, well, no, I'm not. That ain't for me, and that's fine too. But what I do know is what's up on me and what comes out of my mouth and what comes out of my spirit has the power to change. And it's not because I'm so great, but because at the root of who I am is God.
And I like how you said that, how you stripped away all of the other stuff, because I know I encounter a lot of people, and I know it's people that are listening, because people listen from all walks of life, listen to this show. But I've seen people defend how they were treated and the things that they were told. And I'm not coming because I'm not playing with God. And I'm like, okay, what you mean? You understand what I'm saying? So I like how you stripped back all of those things and just said, listen, we all have areas we need change in our lives. Just come and experience the change that you need.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about what's going? Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask you to talk a little bit about what's going on this month with the Reform, and then whatever you were ready to say, go ahead and share that as well.
All right. So the Reform, I've reintroduced a format. I don't plan on the Reform being this thing where you come to every week and I'm talking at you and all this stuff. Reform, the name of it, I can really go into the etymology, but the word re means again or to return to a state. Form or reform means to change. And then forum is an open discussion. And so really what the Reform is an open discussion about change and about returning to who you are. And so we are going to be presenting every month what we call topics to rethink. This month, the topic to rethink is integrity, how to be whole. And so right now in our Believer Friendly Forum Facebook group, we're having a discussion about wholeness. And then twice this month we'll have what's called BFF sessions, which are just the open forum conversations in the Facebook group. And that's led by a forum leader. This month's forum leader is Jeremy Washington of Dallas, Texas. And then at the end of the month, August 22nd, we'll be engaging in Reform worship. Reform worship is basically we'll have some kind of art worship presented, and then I'll present what I call metaphors. They're a teaching style, conversation, and we'll just be going from there. So that's what we're doing, really engaging these topics intently through conversation and through teaching.
Okay. Now, who is the Reform for?
The Reform is for anyone who needs change, anyone who wants to become them again. I can't, even complicate that because, in my mind, I want to say, I don't want people coming from people's churches and all this stuff, but I've discovered that some of the people are coming to the Reform. Some people are coming to the Reform because they're going to church and not getting what they need.
Absolutely.
So it's for anybody who wants change and wants to become them again.
Awesome. And I did that again, even though you were already telling who it was for, because I have a lot of people that are like I used to be, a literal person. So I'm like, nah, he literally hasn't said specifically my situation yet. So that's why I wanted you to explain it in that sense as well. So, and at the end, we're going to make sure you give all the contact information for the Reform. Now, before we go, because we've actually talked ourselves off the air, I want to talk a little bit about your business. You were talking about the restructuring of your business. Can you explain to everybody what it is that you do?
Currently, I am a brand developer and a brand manager. What that means is I help brands not just, and I'll say that my definition of branding is very much different than many of my colleagues and cohorts. I look at branding from a holistic perspective, so it's not just about logos and websites and, graphics, but I approach branding from the standpoint of really, as I was saying earlier, getting to identity and then building strategy around identity. And so what I do is I help people to build their businesses or rebuild their businesses. A lot of times it's just people who have been in business and they're like, I need change. I mean, the same thing that I do with the reform, but in business format is I need change. And so I have a process that I do called storyboarding, and the storyboarding process revisits the past, the present, and also visits the future of the brand, of the business, and it allows people really to audit where they've been, where they are, and where they're trying to go so that we can build strategy around that. But the key to it is the whole time I'm asking them to create answers and write answers out of who they are opposed to out of what people say they should be or should do. And so what I do is help people really get to the root of their identity, build strategy around it, and then present it.
Okay. Now, we're still kind of in being quarantined in certain states. I know some states, they've let up a lot, but there are still some of us that are quarantined. As it relates to business or even ministry as well, from the branding perspective, the way that you're presenting it, what would you say to individuals that now they have all this time in the world? I mean, they're not working or anything. They have all this time to work on either their brand or business, all of those things. What would you say to them that may feel as if there's an urge for them to do it, but they're still kind of like hesitant about it because they feel like, I don't know if I can do it?
Yeah. So I'd say in that regard, I think a lot of times we talk ourselves out of stuff because we don't know. Because we feel like we don't have all the tools. We feel like we don't have. And one thing that I say is through the storyboarding process, it's so funny to watch people crack up and be like, oh, my God, I had more than I thought I had, right? I just think sometimes we misappropriate what we have. And when we misappropriate what we have, then we're not able to really see it clearly. And I'm telling you, there are a lot of people, like organizations and companies, who have talented people in their organizations and in their businesses, but they have them in the wrong position. And so they're like, well, why can't I yield out of this person what I know they're capable of? Well, because you have them misplaced. And so when you have somebody misplaced, going back to the conversation about purpose, when you have somebody doing something that they may be able to do, but that they're not made for, then, you mess it up. And so sometimes we have tools at hand. Sometimes we have resources at hand that we don't realize, but because we're using them for something else. And so what I would say to you is give yourself an opportunity to re-envision what your business, what your, even business concept is, and really take time to reevaluate what you have at hand, because you probably have had everything that you needed at hand all along, but you just haven't been able to see it because you've been stuck in the I can't or what ifs. And I just say get out of that and get somebody to help you. Hire somebody to help you. And if you can't hire somebody to help you, just ask somebody, hey, what do you see with my business? What's your experience been? Ask your customers and your clients, what have your experiences been with my business? Because the reason why I was even able to really draw up some of the things with my business, in this reshaping and restructuring, is I literally called clients, past clients and present clients, and said, yo, what's your experience been? What's been most valuable to you? And that actually just changed a lot for me.
Okay. Now, before I get to the three questions, I did want to revisit what you brought up earlier, because you said you wanted to share about that, where you were being the voice for so many, or you were being, offering solutions to so many, but you got to a stage or a state where you felt as if, you had no purpose.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. How did you transition or navigate through those times?
So I'm going to say I'm going through a time now. I didn't get to a place where I didn't feel like I had purpose in this case. Previously, oh my goodness, but they all stem from the same place, and that was a place of me constantly overextending myself. And a lot of times we think that because we can do it, because we, I'm going to say it this way. My mother taught us this principle growing up about lending people money. She said, if you can't afford to give it to them, don't let them borrow it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a principle that really, I didn't understand until now, because I was a guy. I would give you money. I mean, just in a quite literal sense, I would give you money, and then I'm like, how am I going to pay my phone bill? Wait a minute.
That was
me. I mean, and I did it consistently, especially when I was in my pastoral role. I can't tell you, I lost the car, lost the house, behind trying to pay for ministry stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you. And so for me, even in business, I would really be like spending all this time for clients and all this stuff. And, again, people are paying me to do stuff, and I get it. I'm spending all this time working on client stuff. But then, you go to my website and you're like, oh, so he did that for them, but look at his stuff. He doesn't even have it together for him. If you ask him what his business is and what he does, he probably can't even tell you. Look at this. And so I'm saying that to say, you get to a place where you lose a sense of purpose, and it's easy to lose a sense of purpose because you're giving what's for you to people. And my spiritual father taught me this principle that we give out of our overflow. We give out of our overflow. In other words, we don't give people what's for us. We make sure that we're
right.
And if we have what we need, then we're going to constantly overflow. Because as we continue to receive, guess what? We're not giving what we need for us to survive, for us to maintain. We're giving out of what we have extra to give. And I know a lot of people think that's like, either that's selfish or even that's impossible. But it's not selfish to be whole before you try to make somebody else whole. As a matter of fact, it's the responsible thing to do. As a matter of fact, I bet you, if you've been giving out of that place where you're not whole, you can go back to the people who you gave to, and you'll find holes in them, in their businesses, that you weren't able to fill because you yourself weren't whole when you're working with them.
Wow. So true. So true. I'm just sitting here thinking now, like, wow, okay. Man, okay. All right, so let's get to these 3 questions. I can think about all this off the air. All right, so the first question in the final 3 is because you're giving us a lot over this hour, if everyone forgot everything that you said, what would be one thing that you would want everybody to remember from this conversation?
I would tell people to be whole for you and give out of your overflow.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The second question, on here we like to acknowledge what we call transforming transformers. And transforming transformers are those who have committed their lives to or submitted their lives to their own transformation process and then became important agents or played important roles in the transformation of others. Mm-hmm. Mentors, pastors, things like that. In your personal life, would you like to acknowledge any of the transforming transformers that have helped you along your journey? I usually give space for about 5.
Yes. I will first acknowledge my mother. My mother has been the prime example of someone who is a transformer through being transformed. The biggest thing is not because my mother's been perfect, but the reason why I can call her a transformer of transformers is because she has been so willing to come back and go, you know what, I got that wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that is the most transformative thing you can do, is to reflect on your behaviors, reflect on your actions and your words, and say, you know what, I didn't get that right. And so if I hurt you or I harmed you in the process of that, I apologize, and now I'm going to show you how to do it differently. Secondly, I would have to say Elliot Carlisle. When I left Indianapolis, I literally didn't know where I was going, and God saw fit to really put him in my path. I can't even go into that story, but God saw fit to put him in my path, and for him to provide a place of refuge, but also a place of growth and a great place of understanding. It's so interesting. I really wish I could get into that story, because I got into a lot of arguments behind that because people didn't understand. Like, why are you going there? I mean, it was so much going on, and so many conversations, so many thoughts, so many opinions, and all that stuff. And I really don't care. That's the interesting thing about me, is that I really don't care. But where it became a conflict is because I was trying to make people understand. And I'm just going to say I appreciate him for not just being that place of refuge, but also out of his example, not necessarily anything that he said to me. I mean, because he had a lot to say. You've had him on the show, and you know who he is, so you know he got a lot to say.
Definitely.
But not based on what he said, but on his demonstration of being somebody who lives by truth. He has been transformative in that way. Thirdly, another person I would say is just like a big contributor, especially in the last couple of years, is my sister, my friend, my coach. I don't know what else, but Shauna Van Bogart. Shauna has been, oh my God, I just got to say it like she said it. So I'll never forget that she had asked me a question about why I'm not doing certain things in my business. And I started going through this list of, I don't have enough experience in this. And she looked at me and she said, that's bullshit. And I can't tell you the laughter. I laughed. I mean, she and I had like hysterical laughter for probably 5 minutes after that, because it was. And if I could say anything, is she's a person who has held me accountable to returning to my strength and my power and to the knowingness of who I am. And so I would have to say that she, by far, is a transformer. I would also have to say that another transformer in my life is Gayla Singleton. Gayla Singleton is actually Elliot's best friend, and I'm only saying that because I can go to a whole bunch, but I'm saying that specifically because Gayla has been a representation to me of truth, the good, the bad, the ugly. She's no holds barred. She's not going to, sugarcoat anything, even about herself. If she's messed up, she's going to tell you that she's messed up. If she ain't got it together, she's going to tell you she ain't got it together. And with her, it just is what it is. And one of the biggest things with me talking so strongly and heavily about identity, her example and her level of accountability to me just remaining in a place of truth, regardless of how uncomfortable, that has been paramount for me in really understanding and really being able to even teach what I'm teaching on the Reform, just teach identity from that space, because, I taught, a whole lesson on truth. And, I mean, I can only do that because of people like her, but specifically like her in my life. So she's definitely a transformer. And then finally, I have to say my spiritual father, prophet, apostle, Alvin Smith.
Yes.
And the reason why I say that is because he is Alvin E. Smith. That's all I can say. He is Alvin E. Smith. I'll never forget the first time I met him. Elliot took me to his house. I walked in the door. I shook his hand and sat down on his couch. He looked at me and said, "I didn't catch your name." And I said, "Mike." He said, "Mike." Leaned back in the chair, looked up in the sky. And when I tell you everything that was going on in my life at that time, he said to me, he mentioned to me, it was mind-blowing in and of itself. But it wasn't his insight and it wasn't his, prophetic gift, if you will, that tripped me out. It was that he knew what the problem was, but he's always coming with the answers.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I can have the conversation about purpose and what I believe purpose is because I have a prime example of someone who will unashamedly identify and address problems, but also know how to give you the solution, even when he doesn't even know what he's talking about, because he says it all the time, I don't even know what I'm talking about. So for me, he is number 5. He's the ultimate, in my opinion, transformer of transformers.
Awesome. We honor each and every one that you honored on tonight. Now, I want to give you an opportunity. I want to leave this space for you to give everybody your social media handles, and like I said, we'll put them in the description as well. Your website, how they can even learn more about the Reform, and if they desire, attend the teachings and all of those things, and attend everything that's going on, or the metaphors. And I also want you to leave one last word with our listening audience.
Yes, sir. I won't give my personal social media handle because it's way too complicated to share. But you can find the Reform at _Reforum, REFORUM, on Instagram, on Facebook as well. You can find it as the Reforum. We're doing all of our programming and teachings and metaphors. All of that is happening in a group on Facebook called Believer Friendly Forum. You can, in terms of my business, you can visit Your Supernormal. That's YOURSUPERNORMAL, yoursupernormal.com. And that's how you can find me. In terms of what I want to leave with the audience, Dr. Pettyjohn, you said that we've been all over the place, but I actually, in my opinion and in my perspective, we've been in one place the entire time, many different iterations of it, many different versions of it. But at the end of the day, what we've really been talking about is you coming to a place of identity, coming away from the programming, coming away from autopilot, coming away from the robotic behavior, and really returning to who you are and living life out of that space and producing in your business, in your family, in your relationships, in your ministry, even like producing out of identity. And so if I could leave anything with the people, I would simply say to you all that you should commit yourself to knowing who you are and knowing who you are in depth, because I don't believe that anybody should be able to tell you anything about yourself. I think that's a gala statement. Nobody should be able to tell you anything about yourself that you don't already know. That's not that anybody can't tell you anything, but I'm saying is if somebody brings the truth to you, you're able to connect it to the truth that you already have. And I'm saying all that to get to this point, to say this, that we learn defense mechanisms in our lives. We learn lots of mechanisms. But remember, the root of the word mechanism is machine. And so if you're somebody who's defensive, if you're somebody who's stuck in a pattern, know that you become a machine, that you become a robot. And if you identify that with yourself, it's not a bad thing that you realize that. As a matter of fact, it's the opportunity now for you to break the cocoon that you built and for you to fly.
Awesome. Wow, what a night, guys. Like I said, it has felt like a master class to me, and very few of our shows feel like master classes. I've said that about a couple of other ones, I believe, but tonight really felt like a master class. But I want to get this last question out before we go to. I end every conversation with this last question, and that question is, who is God personally to you?
I am. God is I am to me. When Moses asked God, who do I tell them sent me? He said, tell them I share, or I am what I am, I will be what I will be.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yep.
I teach adamantly and repeatedly that at the root of who we are is God. When God made man, he made him in his image and in his likeness. I think that the deceiver, whoever he, she, or it may be, the deceiver has caused us to believe that we no longer have that identity. But really, when I answer the question, who is God, the answer to that is I am. That I am.
Awesome. And the reason why I asked that question is that I believe that, you know, we all have had personal, intimate encounters with God, which has given us revelation and a greater understanding of who he is. But I believe when we link with each other, when we have conversations with each other, that we are being introduced to realms and dimensions of the Creator that we haven't experienced yet. So it begins to unlock various things in our lives. So I always like to end the conversation with that very question. Listen, Mike, thank you for tonight. Definitely appreciate you coming on. Listening audience, I encourage you, connect with him. If you're out there and you need the services that he provides, link up with the services, check out the Reform. I'm going to put the links also in the show description so you can do that. Make sure you connect with me on all social media platforms just by typing in my name, Clifton Pettyjohn. Visit the website to find out about our upcoming show. Remember, Season 2 ends on the 31st. We have a great lineup this month. So visit www.cliftonpettyjohn.com. There you're going to get all the information you need about upcoming guests. And I'm going to be putting some, I guess, little things out about Season 3, guys. I'm excited about Season 3. Not going into details yet because I want to make sure we finish strong with Season 2. But Season 3 is going to be crazy. So make sure you're tuning in this month and you're preparing for Season 3. And as I always say, guys, create a great day, walk with purpose, and by all means, execute your vision. Peace.